Welcome to Truist Park. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize a few special guests that are in attendance today. Walt's family, his wife Terry, his boys Blake, Bo, and Brock, and Brody joining us virtually, Brian Snicker, and Chipper Jones. We will start with some opening remarks, followed by questions from the media, and now I'll turn things over to Alex Anthopoulos, President of Baseball Operations and General Manager. Alex?
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you to Walt's family, his wife Terry, and his three boys that are here. Obviously, this has been a long process for us to get this done. First and foremost, I want to thank our chairman, Terry McGurk, for his support throughout this whole entire process, and the entire baseball operations team. I know it took a little longer than everybody expected or wanted, but this was important for us. It was important for us to get it right. It was a rare opportunity for us to really canvass the entire game, teams, the league, talk to as many people, do as much background work as we could. And ultimately, that search came back to Walt. And I couldn't be more excited. His experience, his character, his work ethic is exactly what we want here. And we expect great things going forward, and we expect to get back to the playoffs going forward. So with that, I want to present him with his jersey and his hat. He's going to switch from 4 to 22. What he wore as a player, and I just want to congratulate Walt on the new manager of the Braves.
All right.
And we'll do a photo. You have, and you hold it. We'll take photos first. You hold one side, and the other. Yeah. And then we'll. All right. Good.
Thanks, Mitch.
There you go.
Dramatic pause here for the buttons.
Looks good.
You get one button at the top.
I
That's
got
it.
one.
He gets one button. Yeah. Congratulations. Floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like Alex said, thanks for being here. You know, it's been an interesting process. You know, I think I'm very excited once Snit stepped away and I became a part of this. It was something I got really excited about. So, you know, my history here, my last 8 years, I think, you know, I'm hoping it'll be a seamless transition here because of the relationships, not only with the players, but the front office. You know, there's the support staff. There's respect and trust that flows up and down the chain of command. And so I think, you know, for that reason, we can hit the ground running. You know, it's, you know, the first time I did this, it was, I came to realize that, I mean, it sounds weird, but it takes the better part of a year to truly understand your team. I'm talking about, you know, getting to know them on a deep level, what makes them tick, you know, what situations they thrive in, even down to their body language and those types of things that we read into. So that's a process that takes the better part of a year, and I think, you know, the fact that I've been here and a lot of those things are already established, like I said, we can hit the ground running. But that being said, I want to throw out some thank yous also. My family, my 4 boys, they're my 4 best friends, and you know, my wife, who for 35 years has navigated this baseball life to perfection. So, you know, I'm grateful for the people in my life. Thank you to Terry McGurk, and same name as my wife, Terry. Make that clear there, but and thank you to Alex and everybody else that was involved in this coming to fruition. Look, I understand the impact of this Braves brand. Played here for 3 years, you know, obviously coached for 8 years. I understand the wide-reaching fan base, you know, the history of this brand and how important it is to a lot of people, and how many people have worked really hard to make this brand really one of the envies of the sports world. When you consider, like I said, our far-reaching fan base goes coast to coast. This venue we play in, the history here, the success, the Hall of Famers, and ultimately the people. You know, the standards are really high, the expectations are high, and it's a good thing. It means you're doing something right. But you know, and I want to say thank you to SNIT. I mean, without SNIT, I wouldn't be here. You know, SNIT and Bobby Cox brought me back into a Braves uniform 8 years ago, and I loved these last 8 years working for SNIT. I would have happily done it for another 10 years. If SNIT went another 10 years, I'd have happily done it. So, learned a lot. I've evolved, you know, from my first job in Colorado. Yeah, I've learned a lot. The game has changed. You know, I'm sure I've changed, and hopefully wiser. But you know, and I think we need to appreciate and respect what's gone on here the last 8 years on SNIT's watch. And we need to maintain some perspective, because I believe that, you know, outside of any team called the Dodgers, every team in baseball is signing up for our last 8 years. Matter of fact, they're tearing a hole in the paper signing up for it. So I think we need to keep that in mind and honor that and maintain some perspective and understand what this man in front of me has done for this organization. And it's going to be his 50th year. So with that, I guess we'll take some questions. Okay. Thank you.
There are microphones on either side of the room. Mark Bowman.
Walt, can you just tell us, what was your thought process over the last couple of weeks as time progressed? Were you starting to get worried they may go externally?
Yeah, look, you never know, right? I mean, you try to read the tea leaves, and, you know, usually that doesn't work out too well. But, yeah, early on, I was very excited to be a part of it and to be considered a candidate. You know, obviously, as time went on, you start to, you know, things start to creep in your mind. And yeah, there were times where I thought maybe this ship had sailed. But we all know Alex, how thorough he is and how stealthy he is. Likes to work under the cover of darkness. And so, you know, this process was, you know, was like that at times. But yeah, I couldn't be more excited. You know, yesterday when I got that call from Alex, I mean, yeah, tough to explain. There's a lot of responsibility here, like I said, with this brand, this franchise, but I embrace it.
Barrett.
Walt, you mentioned that you've changed, the game has changed since your time in Colorado. How has your view of advanced analytics changed during that span? Because the game has changed and moved in that direction.
Look, I've evolved with the game. I think if you don't, you're a fool. So, you know, my philosophy is, why would anybody, especially in a position of leadership, turn their back on information? And Alex has done a great job, and his team has done a great job of blending, you know, the wisdom that comes from being in uniform for a number of years, and the information that's available to us today, and the technology that's available. So I'm very curious when it comes to the information. I want it, and then, you know, there's a point where you got to put context to it, and I always say that, you know, there's an art and a science to everything. You know, the information gathering is the science part of it, and the art is putting context to it in the dugout and making it practical and pragmatic over the course of a 9-inning game. So, yeah, I think you have to evolve. The game has changed, like I said, and yeah, you'd be a fool not to evolve with the game.
Allison.
Two questions. Walt, what's one thing that you learned from Brian Snitker during your time working with him? And then for Alex, what stood out about Walt Weiss and during this process?
That's an easy one for me, and I think the top of the list, there's several things, but patience. It's really good to see, for me to see SNIT operate these last 8 years because, our personalities complement each other very well. I mean, obviously our personalities are different. We're two different people. But, my personality is always, to hurry up and get in there and fix things. And watching SNIT have a feel for the timing of when to interject was very valuable for me. And to watch him absorb losses like he did. I mean, I'd come in his office, because I always go in the office, because I never wanted the manager, I never wanted SNIT to have to feel a loss by himself. And I've been there, and nobody feels a loss more than a manager. So as a bench coach, I didn't want to forget that. So always checked in with SNIT after the game, and, usually it was him giving me the therapy. So his patience and his feel for the room and for situations, his timing, impeccable.
Yeah, from my standpoint, obviously I've worked with Walt for 8 years, but I've worked with him in the role of being the bench coach and never had a conversation with him. As we all know, the manager and the bench coach, the roles are totally different. I mean, being able to talk to him for the first time about being the manager of this team, it's not, sure, you can use your past experiences and your experiences here with the Braves, but it's not the same conversation. And so as much as I knew Walt, I knew everybody on our staff. That doesn't mean everyone was a candidate. So the manager role is very different. It's unique. It's incredibly challenging. And some people aren't suited for it, in my opinion. Getting a chance, even though I knew the person and the man, he had that. That doesn't mean that he would have necessarily been the best person for the job. And, so having finally had a conversation about the manager and what that entails, because we never had those discussions in 8 years here. That wasn't the role. Those are conversations that I have with SNIT. And then obviously going through the process and doing our work and so on. But, at the end of the day, this was about the best person. Internal, external, didn't matter. This is the third time I've done this. 2 other times I've gone external. And I never had a thought process of, it needs to be internal. It's the best person, period. You hear different things about, well, the roster and this and that. The rosters change. You can change the manager at the same time. You need the right person, the right individual, no matter where they come from. And he stood out as the right man for the job.
Dave?
Walt, I know you said you've changed since the first time you did this in Colorado. How do you think this environment here with the Braves, you've been in it now for a long time, will help you succeed as a manager here by comparison to there, just the resources you have, how you've grown as a manager, the players you have, everything?
Look, the circumstances they couldn't be more different. When I took the job in Colorado, I was out of the game for 4 years. I worked as a special assistant to the GM and the manager for 8 years, but I was gone for 4 years. I was coaching high school football. So I got pulled back into it. I got asked to do an interview, and I said, what the heck? I've never done this. I'll go through this process. It'll be a good experience for me. I ended up getting a job. So, and look, I took over. At that time, it was the season after the worst season in franchise history. Now, there's been some rougher times there recently, but at the time, it was the worst season in franchise history. So, and there were some things there, culturally that, took a lot of time and energy. Look, I love my time there. It gave me this opportunity. If I didn't do that job, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And I had great relationships there. And it really challenged me, and I'm very proud. Look, we didn't have a great record over that 4-year period. Very proud of what me and my staff did and the front office did as far as changing that culture and setting them up, to be better. So I'm proud of that. Here it's obviously very different. Think about yourselves. Where are you? Now compared to 12 or 13 years ago. Hopefully you're a little bit wiser. If not, you probably need to check yourself. So, yeah, I've experienced a lot. And at a high level, I know, like I said, I know what this brand means and how important it is and how high the standards are here. And that's what's exciting. I also know that I have people that I work for, they're going to have my back. You know, I understand it's a performance-based business, and I get it. I've been in the major leagues for 35 years now in a variety of roles. So I get it. You know, it's a bottom-line business. But the winning has to be a byproduct of the relationships you establish, the trust that you have with your players. You know, when it comes to players, as it relates to coaches and managers, typically they ask themselves 3 questions. You know, does he care about me? Can I trust him? And can he make me better? And, you know, I feel like I've checked those 3 boxes already here over my last 8 years. So circumstances are completely different, and so are the expectations. But like I said, when the expectations are high, it means you're doing something well, so it's a good thing.
Michael? Oh, sorry, Gabe, do you have another question?
No, me.
No, Gabe, go ahead. Do you have
Okay,
another
cool,
question?
cool. Walt, Terry, and your sons, you talked about their support. Could you just elaborate a little bit on just what their love and support meant to you since you made the decision to come back, especially?
Yeah. Well, look, they've been in my corner every step of the way. You know, when I got back in the game, you know, that was a tough one in some ways because I like I said, I was away for 4 years, and I was a dad and a husband, full time. So, you know, the family gets uprooted when you get back into this game. This game is not conducive to family life. It's all consuming. So, like I said, they've been with me every step of the way. I told you my 4 boys are my 4 best friends, along with my wife. And I mean, my wife, she has superpowers in a lot of ways. When it comes to raising a family, she's special.
Michael?
This question's for Alex. What do you believe are the most important qualities for a manager, and why do you think that Walt meets that criteria?
You know, there's so many that you need, but Walt hit on a lot of them. But you know, being able to, you're dealing with so many things when you think about it. The manager, and especially the job's evolved. Even Stitt and I have talked about this. The job has evolved over time. The game has evolved. The staffs have evolved. And you think of the responsibilities you have day in and day out. You're dealing with 26 players, 26 alpha dogs. You're dealing with an expanded front office from what it was 20 years ago. You're dealing with an expanded media contingent, both from a social standpoint and a day-to-day beat writers and so on. Then you've got the in-game component, and then you've got a staff that you've got to deal with as well. So then you have to do the job well beyond that. But you're juggling all those things, and you're spread really, really thin. And from an emotional standpoint, it amazes me that just, you see these managers in the game and Snit and so on, just to not react, to stay calm, to stay patient, to stay even keeled, to be consistent, to be the same person day in and day out. That's hard to do. A lot of people can't do it. And also can maintain the respect of the clubhouse and the players and everybody around you, and also do a good job. So the list goes on and on. It's endless. These jobs are partnerships with players, office, media staff. You're partnering across the board. We all want the same thing. We all want to win. And, we might not always agree on how to get there, but, our values are all very aligned.
Grant?
Walt, I know you spoke glowingly about your time working on Brian Snitker's staff. You also, during your playing days, were able to play for some Hall of Fame managers, Bobby Cox, as well as Tony La Russa. I'm curious about those experiences from your playing days and now getting this opportunity to manage, how you incorporate that in the style in which you like to bring to your team.
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, we're all a product of our experiences and the people we've been around. I was very fortunate to be around some great managers And I take a little bit from all of them. I'm going to take things I've learned from SNIT the last 8 years, as well as what I've learned from Tony La Russa, Bobby Cox, Renee Latchman, Don Baylor, Clint Hurdle. Those are all the managers I either played for or worked with. And look, I mean, that wisdom is shared, right? And that's how we get better, by being around wise people. So I'll take things from all those men, but in the end, it's going to look very different, because it's going to be my personality, my leadership style, my personal touch. So the delivery will be very different from any of the guys I've been around. But yeah, I've been fortunate. I always say, look, I never want to act like I have all the answers, because we all know better. But you know, most of the things I've learned over the course of my life and my career, I've learned through failure, by screwing up. You know, but and the fact that I've been around some pretty smart, wise people in this game. Been fortunate to have been around some high-level people, and every once in a while I paid attention. So a lot of the stuff I've stolen from other people and made it my own, and that's what's going to make it unique in the end.
Bo.
Alex, how many individuals did you interview for this job? And when did you know it was Walt, and what did set him apart from all the other candidates?
Yeah, so we did a ton of work. I mean, we spent, I don't even remember, I feel like it's been a month, or it feels like dog years a little bit, right? So it's been exhaustive. And I mean, the amount of work and candidates and people we spoke to, it was just a lot without getting into specifics. You know, I would say that over the weekend is when, you know, he started to, I had some conversations. I remember there was one I had Saturday morning. You know, I thought about Walt Saturday a little bit, and then I had some conversations Saturday that really impacted me. And then you know, you're still chewing on it and going through stuff, and really ultimately had a few more that I needed to have on Monday, just to make sure that I checked all those boxes. And look, I knew Walt, but I only knew him to a certain level, right? I'm not down there working with him day in and day out, and it wasn't in the role of manager. So people can interview and say all the right things and do all the right things, but like I mentioned when I did my first Zoom with you guys, the background work is pretty important. And as much as I felt like I knew the person, still needed to do a lot of work and maybe have a couple conversations on Monday just to make sure some people that were around him a little bit more than anybody else, that I had significant faith and trust in what they had to say. I told them I was leaning in that direction, but I wanted to make sure that, you know, there wasn't anything I missed, and they both stamped it in a lot of ways, and ultimately talked to Terry as well, that this was my choice and this is where I wanted to go. And we walked him through the process and the thought process and why, and how I check boxes and so on. And we obviously decided to go ahead. But you know, it's a big decision, like Walt talked about. This is a big role. This is a big responsibility with where this club is, the expectation. Look, it was no fun not making the playoffs this year, and we can go through the reasons why. But you know, that's just a standard that we've set here, and that's a credit to SNIT, to Bobby Cox, to John Sherholtz, that have set the standard here. You know, you hear guys like Nick Saban, the standard is the standard, and it is. And, you know, we expect to be in the playoffs year in and year out. So, you know, this is a real responsibility, and we owed it to make sure that we left no stone unturned and were as thorough as we could be, even if it was someone that was already internal.
Bailey.
I have two questions. First one is for Alex. Going off of that a little bit, how much of an influence did individuals in the building like SNIT and Chipper and people who know Walt influence your decision? Because you just mentioned, you know, you didn't really know him on a manager capacity, more of a bench coach.
Yeah, I mean, look, I value their opinion immensely. Both guys are not the same person. Their careers are different, but their knowledge, their wisdom, they've won a lot, and they've got a lot more experience in the game than I do. So it carries weight, of course. And you know, I remember somebody I worked with a long time ago told me, you know, it's fine to cast votes, but not all votes count the same. And you know, what I would tell you is when we're going through the process and talking to people, look, certain individual, I'm going to weigh their input more. I'm going to have my own as well. But there's no doubt when we're doing our work, we canvass as many people as we can. And look, I'll talk to those guys about all kinds of things, roster, this, that, whatever. They make me better, you know, and I'm glad that they're both in the organization.
The next question's for whoever wants to take a bite out of it. What have the discussions been at this point about the staff, and will Cranny and Eddie be retained on the staff?
Yeah, so we, you know, this was pretty quick, and that's a conversation that we're going to continue to have. So we don't have anything to announce today, but that's part of the interview process. Everybody you talk to, you ask them, what would you do with a staff and a coaching staff? And everybody we talk to, and I asked Walt those questions when I first interviewed him as well. And this came together, once the World Series was over, I knew at some point you have to make a decision, right? We needed to get going, and that's where it was Saturday. Saturday, this whole thing really started to move for me because I knew that that's Game 7, and this is starting to move. So I had a phone call I made Saturday, like I said, late morning, and then I just gave it a little bit more time and then followed up on Monday. But the staff, Walt certainly has some thoughts. I do as well. Those are things that are priority that we're going to work through the next little bit. So we don't have anything today, but that's definitely a front burner priority for us.
Ken?
Walt, you mentioned embracing analytics and wanting that information. Can you give me an example, hypothetically, of maybe, and it's obviously a very broad field, what is something that you value in it that you can see applying in a game?
That is a broad question.
Hey, broad.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we can go on and on, right, about this, but like I said, it's you get the information, and then it's up to us to put context to it, and the scoreboard always has a say, so that's a factor. But we have a great team that works with Alex and works with us. And those relationships are rock solid and deep rooted. And so there's a lot of trust there. So I value the information that I get from our team upstairs. And yeah, I mean, it's tough to go into specifics of this because there's so many ways we can go when you talk about the analytics and the information. But very open and always very curious to get better in that realm.
Allison?
Alex, when did the interview process really start for just all of them? And can you kind of ballpark how many people you interviewed? It's like during this process?
Yeah, so, I think I did my Zoom call with you guys on the Saturday, I think, and we didn't have a list yet. And I don't even know what the date was, early October, I assume. So, but I would say maybe a week after that, just thinking through, obviously you get through the week and start coming up with names, candidates. And look, a job like this is open, you're getting inundated, right, with so many people, names, direct contacts. It's overwhelming in a lot of ways. But, to do due process, you need to do the work on all of them. So a ton of time was spent making sure we vetted all the names, going through it, and so on. I mean, respect to everybody, I wouldn't get into any specifics, but look, I would have loved to have gotten this done sooner, but the one thing I knew, I even, looked back at where some of the dates, when other managers were hired. I saw Pat Murphy was hired November 16th, Stephen Vogt was hired November 3rd. So it felt longer because we didn't make the postseason, and we had more time. And I knew that I'd been through this twice before. I didn't need to rush. As much as people wanted it to be a rush and wanted to move, I was fine. Now, I did know that once you get to the end of the World Series, free agency hits, we have option decisions to make within 5 days, there's a lot going on. And at some point, you've run the process, right? You've talked to as many people as you can. You've gone through it. You got to make a decision. So I know there's thoughts about, we're waiting for candidates on certain teams and so on. I know this, I was following along things in the media, but look, we had we had employees asked to be interviewed when we were in the playoffs. That happens, right? You have off days, you have things like that. So you don't need, I know that was out there, but you don't need to wait till the end of the World Series to talk to people. You could talk to people throughout the playoffs. And look, Walt's been called on a few times over the past few years. He declined the opportunity to talk to clubs. So, that was his choice to make. He wanted to stay on staff with Snit and be with the Braves. But we've let other people talk during the postseason. We didn't announce it. No one knew about it. But there were many times in that 7-year playoff run where we had employees speaking to teams.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you all very much. If everybody will stay seated so we can move the first couple rows out, and Alex and Walt, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.